what I want to.
That's true.
I'm grown. I'm a grown ass man, Brian. I do what I want. Brian, how would you like to do a reading for a listener? Doesn't that sound fun?
I would love to do a reading for a listener because I think it's a great opportunity for the two of us to demonstrate our various skills, get a listener a real answer from the two most popular forms of divination of the Middle Ages all at once.
That was the most specific and caveated shit I've ever heard in life.
Listen,
the very most popular thing of the Middle Ages, the two of them.
The Middle Ages are big. It's a big time. It's very popular.
Sure.
But yeah, no, we were throwing back and forth the idea of what could we do that were some questions in tandem, some things that we could use the arts back and forth to not do competing readings. You know what I mean? Like spirits do get a little cranky sometimes if you're like, I asked this person this diviner this one thing, and now I'm going to ask the same thing to another person, you know, and like, you know, there's a little bit of verification that's okay, but you go back to the well too many times and you start getting answers like, I told you, you know, like
yeah, or worse.
Yeah, or worse. So
I got to fuck you the other day, and I was like, okay, touche. I did ask the question, the same question that I had already asked. My fault.
Yep.
That's on me.
Geomancer has a particular first position that says, you know the answer to this. And sometimes it's one of those things where you're like, oh, maybe I should take a minute. Maybe I do know the answer to this. You know, like maybe I need to think. And sometimes it's like, motherfucker, you know the answer to this. You know,
yeah.
Like it's, and I got one
time
there too.
Yeah, one time I asked you a question, and you were like, I think you know the answer to this question. I was like, shut up.
The three ones Geomancy offers are really funny. They're like, you already know the answer. You've forgotten to tell me something important. That's another first position thing, which I love as like a check in the... Yeah, exactly. You're excluding something. That's the nice way to frame it. Or this question is cursed.
Oh.
Just like literally in that case, you're like, you got to do a cleansing. I got to do a cleansing. We got to burn the chart and start again. Like it's like, no, this is cursed. And then
that's high stakes.
Yeah. And then the Arab team, the guys who do it by Arab rules, they won't read one where they're like, the chart is silent here. They think that it gives you bad answers. I don't do that. Anyway, point is that you are very good at electing times for things. I can think about ways to help people find their way to that time. How do you go about doing it? So like there's a when and a how. It's a combination here that we're looking at. So we have a listener who volunteered to be our guinea pig on the air for this. And we're gonna give it a shot.
And if you, listener/reader at home, want to get on the next one, we have decided to make a segment of this. And so if you go to ZamboniFunk.com/store, then you can, it's one of the items there. You don't have to buy anything. It is free, but you'll be able to send me the question, and we'll pull up a chart, and we'll do it by lottery every time. It's going to be so much fun.
It's going to be a blast. And yes, where Zamboni requires more details than I do, so you gotta hit him up with some birth times and things. That's
yeah. I need a time, date, place of birth. If we're not doing that, that's the reason why I don't do astrology at parties. Not because it's not fun, but because you need so much accurate birth information. And the cards and stuff works way better in a cocktail party environment. But yeah, so we've got somebody in here. We're definitely not gonna call her Jane, because one time that one time when I asked you a question that I knew the answer to, it was about someone named Jane, and we're not talking about that. So why don't we call this person Sarah?
Sarah sounds great. Let's do Sarah. So Sarah writes in, and Sarah is looking for a when would be a good time to find clients that are flush with cash. Like when do we do this? What's in the space weather for this?
Okay. Is it all right? So the question is, what's in the space weather? Because as the first time I saw the question, it was when would be a good time to do it, and
when would be a good time is a good time. Yeah.
Well, sure. So my first thought in that with that question is now and always. Like, why are you not hanging out with rich people immediately? Like, go do that tonight.
Right, right. Which is a fair answer. It's a fair answer. The answer is not. But I think the sense of like, if we're fishing or hunting, you know what I mean? If we're trying to
Hmm.
net those good clients, when is there a good opportunity to maybe find when are the fish running?
When are the
Is
fish going to be there?
yeah, yeah. I think that's the heart of the question.
Hmm.
And I took a sort of like from that, okay, so like when we find out when the fish are running, how do we get to those fish? Like how do we hunt them? How do we fish them out? So that's the angle on this question that I'm going to contribute with the geomancy. So I don't know. Do you want to start with the when and work to the how?
Yeah, yeah, we can start with a win. I have some bad news, Sarah, and it is that the space weather sucks for I don't know the foreseeable future. Like I don't know. This is one of the things. Like when I first started doing astrology, and I like really broke as an astrologer. It was 2020, and so I was like, I don't know if the space weather is always terrible, but it is bad, right? I don't like any of this at all.
A little "May you be born in interesting times" kind of vibe
Yeah,
to
right,
the space
exactly.
weather.
And so, there's to my mind, there's a certain sense of like the gods are always squabbling about one thing or another, so maybe things are always kind of like something ridiculous,
Right.
but like but what we're looking at right now for the foreseeable future, like presumably this person is like kind of broke and is ready to stop being broke tomorrow. So like if that's what's going on, then we can, like um you're gonna have to make do with some stuff here, you know.
But that actually we'll get into the hows in a second here, but I think that's I like those kind of timings as well because like we live. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like we
Hmm.
live in the times we have. So we just got to make the every time I listen to the astrology podcast and like here's the one good election for the month. I'm like, well, thank you. That's
Sure.
very kind to share that for people to make use of it. And also the moon is good sometime. You know, like like
Yeah,
just
sure.
make the mess of what we can do, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So in a situation like that, so like, because I wonder, is this an election proper? Because if it, when I think about an election, I usually like, so if I give someone an election for like to launch a business or something like this, then usually like there's a business that they want to launch. You
Right.
know what I mean? There's a thing, and this question doesn't seem like when do I launch my business, right? This question seems more like when should I be hanging out with rich people? Am I misinterpreting the question here? Do
I
you think?
think, well, no, I think you're asking a good question about the question, which is, like, are we framing it right? And this is something we need to get into with these questions a lot. Um, Again, I'm coming back to the fishing metaphor of like, when is the good time to perhaps initiate, plan, grab good clients? Like, or is there a time where my personal astrology, right, opens a portal for me to be like, now's the time to start grabbing people. You're gonna have a good window to where what you want to do is gonna work. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Now for me, when I'm approaching this, like I say, geomancy uses the astrological houses, and so as like places of where the question exists, right? And in this case, geomancy sees things of like, how do I get to other people? How do I control other people? How do I get things from them? Any of this kind of stuff as a seventh house issue, right?
Okay.
Like,
Hmm.
how do I go find somebody? How do I go get an other or groups of others?
Sure.
Um, and specifically, it's called out in the old text for hunting, which is one reason I'm seeing it through that lens.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Hmm.
so if I'm hunting for clients flush with cash, that's a seventh house question for me. So, but when you're doing an
Okay.
election, how do we titrate this? Like, if I'm hunting, what's a
Yeah.
good time to go hunt?
Sure. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look and see
Let's
what we
take a
can
look.
see.
See
Let's
what we
look at
got.
the chart and see if we can find anything interesting here. So this is Sarah's birth chart. So we'll just take a look here for a moment. The first thing that we can notice is that Sarah here has the sun in Libra pretty close to the north node. And so it looks like there would have been a solar eclipse here in Libra about, what is this, 9 days after birth or something like this, which is
Hmm.
interesting because right now we have the eclipses going on in Libra on the south node. So that's just like by the way, potentially, but I'm not sure if that's going to be noticeable or whatever, but or relevant to this question. But that's something that might be worth noticing here. This person has the moon in Gemini and has Sagittarius rising. It's interesting to see that Sagittarius is rising here because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and we've got Jupiter right here on the rising. Jupiter is going to rise in 6 minutes or something like this. So this is like prime Jupiter placement. This is damn near an election unto itself. So especially once you notice that like the moon is making an aspect to Jupiter here, like I
Yeah.
may have elected this. You know what I mean? Like so so if we're thinking when to hunt in the seventh house, I had not thought about hunting as a seventh house thing, but it totally is. It makes all the
Right.
sense here. Then this person's seventh house is in Gemini. And so Gemini right now does contain Jupiter. So
Ooh.
Jupiter is going to be in Gemini for basically all of the rest of this year and for almost another, it's almost a year from now. Jupiter moved into Gemini in May. And so we're looking at like May or June of next year, like the move from Gemini
Right.
into Cancer. And so so Jupiter, being the great good spirit, the one that like wants to bring you joy, luck, and abundance and all this kind of stuff. This does look like expansion and nice things when it comes to the seventh house stuff, right? And so if you're looking for, especially if you're doing client work, right? Like you're
Right.
doing the kind of thing, like if you're doing astrology readings or geomancy readings or something like this, right? Like what you're going to do is you're going to sit down. I'm going to talk to you. You're going to talk to me. That's what we're going to do. And so that is a
Right.
one-on-one seventh house relationship. Love to see it. Now, the thing about this is that currently, right now, we do have Mars in Gemini, and I'm not sure when this episode is going to come out. Probably, I'm going to try to make it snappy in order to make this reading situation work out. But we'll have Mars in Gemini for another month here, so there's going to be plenty. So, Mars, Jupiter in Gemini. I want to like it. I want to
Right.
like it real bad. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Because Mars and Jupiter is typically like pretty victorious kind of energy. It's like
Right.
charge on, and we're gonna go and do the damn thing, right? And we're gonna be victorious, and it's gonna be lovely. But we do have Saturn in Pisces right now, overcoming that Gemini. And
Okay.
we can notice that Saturn is actually in Pisces in this natal chart. And so that Saturn is going to be loud. That Saturn is going to be a bit of a drag and it's going to be kind of annoying or some kind of obstacle or something like this. Now, what's interesting here is that Saturn is also ruling the second house of finances and money and
Hmm.
stuff like
Hmm.
this, right? So to see that Saturn is so prominent kind of speaks to, I don't know, a preoccupation with money that may even be getting in the way a little bit.
Hmm.
Like the money piece here. I don't know. It's in the overcoming position, so it like wants to be super. It wants to be the thing that is going on. And in the natal chart, this is Saturn in Pisces in a Jupiter sign, and Jupiter is in Sagittarius, also in a Jupiter sign, overcoming this Saturn, right? So this like looks like it wants to work in some kind of way,
Hmm.
but probably on a Saturn timeline, you know? So we're probably looking at like later maturity, this kind of thing,
Right.
when all that stuff wants to work. You look very pensive right now.
I had a thought occur to me, and I want to ask a dumb question. would it be better to seek out old clients?
Sure. Well, I mean, how many broke ass 20-year-olds do you know?
Another good point. I
Right?
know a lot.
Right. All the 20-year-olds I know are broke asses. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
And so so yeah, you make a good point here in that looking up in age demographics is probably a good way to be around people who might have some money or be a little more established or something like that. People who, the way that our economy functions, people tend to gain resources over time and abilities and stuff like this. And so, yeah, looking for older clients. I'm not sure what this person is trying to do with these clients, and so it's hard to say exactly. But that sort of thing looks like it could be something worth looking at here. For sure. Now, one other thing that I am thinking about here, just sort of spitballing a little bit, is Jupiter next summer, is going to be in Cancer. And that is an exaltation for Jupiter. So that looks cute. That looks like Jupiter, like really trying to like bring all type of nice stuff. And that for this person is going to be Jupiter in the 8th house here. And the 8th house is the area of the chart that has to do with other people's resources and other people's money and stuff like that. So in the way that you interact with other people's money, then, that is Jupiter in Cancer looks like a good time for that. It looks like it wants to grow things.
No, that's interesting there too, in the sense of like, well, let me back up because I have another question. So you said you wanted to like the Jupiter Mars in Gemini, and you gave some good reasons why you do like it. Gung ho, ready to go, conquers all things, a little bit expansionist, everything else. And yes, I see how the Saturn and everything else maybe is a little bit pulling on it, like sort of pushing against that. Was there something else about Jupiter and Mars in Gemini that you were like, you want to like it, but you can't because
the Mars. I don't like the Mars very much. Like Jupiter and Mars is very like charging on to victory and this kind of thing. This is also a day chart, right? So this person was born at 11:02 a.m., which is noticeable because the sun is here above the horizon, right? We got the horizon right here. The sun, this broad daylight right now, right? So in a day chart, Mars tends to be a little more problematic or be, like get in the way in some ways here. And we can notice that also in this person's chart, Mars is in the 12th house along with Pluto. And so Mars is in position to fuck this person up in some kind of way, right? Mars can be a problem here. And so to see that Mars so like Jupiter, want to love Jupiter, angular and all this, right? Really want to love it. But Jupiter has to interface with Saturn and Mars. And anytime you're looking at two malefics, not just one, but two malefics, and Jupiter's not in nice position in Gemini. Jupiter's already weak in Gemini. And so this looks like the sort of situation where Jupiter can be overwhelmed by this. And so it might not feel like, oh, Jupiter is like all up in my Gemini, right? Or all up in my 7th house, like it might be cute for a second, but like, bro,
Now, so we do know, so you already gave a good point, which is like when Jupiter moves to Cancer, that could be a time where things could grow in a more uninhibited way. This could be a really good, pickup. What happens? When does Mars leave Gemini? So like, what if we take a little of that pressure off?
Okay, sure. Yeah, right. Mars will be out of Gemini in 4 weeks from now. So we're talking about like early September, I think, the mid-September, something like this. And okay, cool. Like it. I think I like it, right? But then the other thing about that is that puts Mars into Cancer, into the 8th house in the exactly. So other people's money already. So now we're like, ooh, how much do we really like this?
Right. And so how long does Mars stay in Cancer right now?
Too fucking long, because we're about to have a Mars. Yeah, we're about to have a Mars retrograde also. So Mars is going to slow down in that Cancer and then enter into Leo, the very first little bit of Leo, and then it's going to come back and and then that's gonna be opposite to Pluto. It's a mess. It is a mess for quite some time.
So would you say then the window, we have a longer term window of opportunity? Because like Saturn's going to be in Pisces for a while, right? Like it's just going to be, or like for like another 6 months, another year, Saturn's going
Yeah,
to be in
no,
Pisces.
we're toward the end of Saturn in Pisces at this point. You know, it's a 2.5 to 3 year
Yeah,
transit, and we're 2 years into that by now,
right,
and
right.
something.
So is there, when that Mars moves into Leo,
Hmm.
is there like a moment where you're like, now's the time to do something to initiate
Hmm.
the process? Like you're
Sure.
pretty cleared up.
All right, let's check it out. Let's go to the ephemeris here. So Mars, this is Mars in Cancer. Shoo-ba-doo. So Mars in Leo in November.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see here. So at that time, Mars moving into Leo, then that's got Venus in Sagittarius. And then Venus a little bit after that is going to be into Capricorn, which in this natal chart is real cute because Venus in Sagittarius is going to be in the rising sign. Love to see Venus in the rising
Right,
sign. So
right.
that's going to be like, I look especially cute and attractive to other people. Love it, right? And then Venus moving into Capricorn here, that's going to be Venus in the second house. So that looks like a moment of Venus,
Bringing
bringing
some money
delight
in.
and cooperation and these kind of things to the money piece here. So so that's a good point that does look like a moment where there could be some nice stuff going on here. You know,
Yeah, and I'm
all
thinking
things being
like
equal.
magically, I'm thinking like you do something in that time frame to sort of like pull in some of that juice. You know it's
Sure.
not, you know it's going to be a while before we get the full, natural timing. If I actually I hate that I just said that because it's all natural timing. It doesn't make any sense. But
Right.
like the longer time cycle, that's going to be a little bit. But if you kind of magically grab a little touch of that at that point in time, you can
Yeah.
maybe kind of coast a little bit with some of that,
Yeah,
talismanic
right.
juice.
In this like first couple of weeks or it looks like all of November is going to
Mm.
be Venus in a position that we would like. So that's yeah, I would say November here is probably a pretty good time. But the main thing that's going on right now for this person is the fucking Saturn return.
Right.
And so plan longer term than you want. I know you want the money right now, but
Yeah.
like Saturn is ruling your money, and Saturn is in the middle of a return, and there's a lot of pressure on that right now. Now, same way that Mars tends to be a little bit more difficult in a day chart, Saturn tends to be a little more constructive in a day chart, and so especially if you do your Saturn things and like your long-term planning, and you make sure that you build out your infrastructure in a way that like has the boundaries in the right place and it keeps you on task and your routines and habits and all that sort of stuff. Boring things, you do the boring things. Do the boring things. Do the boring things. Do the boring things. If you do those things, then it looks like a situation that can work out well for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my question to you is, what does Geomancy have to say about this?
It's
I'm
actually really interesting. Like this is a really interesting. I'm glad we started with the Astro because we talked about some themes that I think are going to be on the money here that also show up in the geomancy. So let me just share the chart. Okay. Is that coming through, Zamboni? We looking good?
Yep.
All right, cool. So uh, so what we got rolling on here for folks who haven't maybe seen a geomancy chart before, you're really seeing one chart broken down two different ways. The shield chart, what we see on the left hand side of the screen, that's really all the answer you need. The square chart you have on the right hand side of the screen is a different way to break it down so you can kind of see some different aspects of what's going on in a different representation. But technically, you only need the shield chart to understand everything that's here. And so what we have at first, you'll see the row of 8 at the top, then the row of 4, 2, 1, and then 1 on the side. Those are the mothers, and the sort of like the mothers, the aunts, and the children of these different pieces here. Like this is how it breaks down. We'll get into a
So are we
whole
talking about Sarah's mothers and aunties and?
no, that's the figures. That's just how they're broken apart.
Oh,
So
okay.
each of those first 12 figures, they represent a house in astrology. Okay, so like, and we read right to left in honor of our Arabic ancestry. In Europe we get this from contact with Arabic, Arabian-based geomancers who themselves got it from Africa. Like this is all an African tradition that sort of spreads north over time. So we read right to left. So you can see in the normal chart there, you're going to read counterclockwise to go around, right? So first house, and they're all listed with Roman numerals, but so those first 12, they get put into the houses, and so they affect different areas of life. You yourself, your money, short-term communication, and your siblings, your house, your father, your sex, love, creativity, passion, gambling. Sixth house, the house of things that annoy the fuck out of you. As Zamboni would put it, the rocks in your shoe, small animals. Seventh house, which is where we're going to be looking tonight. Other people, other things, other, direct things about, enemies, things you're trying to find. Eighth house, in the way I read this is other people's money, just like you do. Debt, taxes, death, and also practical magic. So like if you're going to do witchcraft, you look to house 8.
Do you ever think about the 8th house as the place of certainty?
Ooh.
Now, here is why I would say
That's a
that.
really interesting question.
Right? And like,
Yeah.
I would not have put that there, except that nothing is certain in this life except death and taxes.
Death and taxes. Yeah. Well, and also it is, and to get beyond even just the joke or the statement, the truism, right? The aphorism. It's literally very true. That is what we know. This person is dead. You know what I mean? Like that debt is coming due. You know what I mean? Like this is I like the idea of it as a place of certainty. In geomancy, it makes extra sense because it is the last of the figures that is created through the initial process. So like I roll my dice for the first 4 figures, and then I take the lines of the figures and combine them to make the next 4 figures, right? After that, but they're not added together at that point. But the way that the 10th, the 9th through the 12th are created and the judgment is done is by adding them together. So it's the end of the non-additive process. It's the end where certainty or singularity stops at the 8th house.
Oh, interesting. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something to this certain. I don't know.
I don't know either, but in the math of it, well, dude, this is what we're here for: is nerdery about divination.
Truly.
Yeah.
There's plenty of nerdery to. If people are still listening to this podcast at this point, then they are deep into nerddom. Bring it on. So tell me what the 7th house has for us in this chart.
So the 7th house, so the way we read the chart here is we start by looking at the judgment and then we go to the houses, right? So if we look on the left-hand side there, that's the bottom 3 figures on the shield chart. It's called a shield because it looks like a kite shield, looks like a little Norman shield thing. We have populace, which is the figure of the full moon, or like a crowded subway car. Do you know what I mean? Like there's so much stuff in there, nothing can move, right? That's populace. It's also a mirror because mathematically, any figure that combines with populace returns to its own nature. Okay. So the way you combine them, just so people can follow along, is if it's the same, you put 2 dots. If it's different, you put 1 dot. So anything that encounters a thing of 2 dots is just going to reflect itself back, right? That's the math. So what is reflected here is acquisitio, which is gain, which is Jupiter in Sag. It's really interesting given what the stuff we've been talking about. So when acquisition encounters a lot of stuff, you get more stuff. Like that's the story that's at work here, is that acquisition is a hungry beast that just gets more things. But what's interesting is the right witness reflects like what you bring to the table. Okay. The left witness brings what the world is sort of bringing to you. Right. So in this case, this is why the Mars stuff was cracking me up. The populist figure, the right witness, too much stuff, too much going on, so much stuff going on, even, is built out of two puer figures. Now, puer means the boy, but it's really associated with like a Mars and Aries energy. It's a martial figure. You got so much hunting and fighting and everything else going on that it just kind of like makes a mesh. Do you know what I mean? It's just like you're kind of like, it's just like I'm thinking about in those old cartoons when like everybody kind of dives into the scrum and they're all fighting. It just becomes like a cloud of people like fighting and rolling around and everything else. In other words, what Sarah is doing or seeking to do, it's kind of like just creating that cloud of possibility, but it's just like it's not getting anywhere, right? Her own actions aren't doing anything. Acquisition is meeting that, and what the world is giving you is like you're gonna get stuff. Like the world, the clients are coming, right? But then how do you get that? So now to the seventh house question, right? How do these things connect? The figure representing Sarah is via first house, via the road, right? The path. Now this is like the meandering path. It's one of those things where people are like, the journey is part of the joy. You know, like, yeah. I'd like to actually get shit, please. You know, like it's a long process. That is opposing or is connected to Fortuna Minor. Fortuna Minor is Jack Sparrow luck, right? Like you step off the sinking ship right onto the dock. I like to think of it as you don't have any money in your pocket, but you find a bus ticket home. Right. Like that's what Fortuna Minor is. Now, we didn't ask a question about perfection, you know, so like it's not whether it's true or in that sort of like yes, no kind of sense. But what we see is that what we're reading here is like, hey, you're going to gain stuff. It's going to come your way. This stuff is rooted in what the world wants to give you. But the way to hunt, the way to find this kind of stuff is by increasing your luck, right? You got to sort of just like, you got to get luckier in order to attract this kind of attention. You got to be in that kind of flow state for that to come in. And how do you do that? That's where we get to the eighth house. And this is another really funny piece of shit compared to the chart you were talking about. What's in the eighth house is carcer. Carcer is the prison cell, but it's also the wizard's tower. Like it's any kind of tower or magic circle or anything else you make to make a limit, right? And it's Saturn in Capricorn, right? So when you were like, do the boring thing, it is actually Saturn in Capricorn. Now, there's a weird piece here that this chart has put together, and I don't normally read the astrology, the outer astrology part, like because I think that's not quite as good. But what you see there is actually that's in the house of Pisces. So it's Saturn in Pisces is actually what the chart calls out. If I'm advising here, part of this is to say, what magic can I do? How do I go about doing this? It's lock down your luck magic. It's magic circles. It's getting things under control. It's getting things organized. It's getting things done. But it is also very much like do the boring thing, right? It's a very similar bit of advice when it comes into that place.
Sure. One of the things that I often talk about when I think about Saturn stuff is rain barrels.
Yes,
You
that's a
know,
good one.
like it's
Yeah.
it's the idea that it might be dry today, and that actually might be ideal for building rain barrels, right? You don't want to build rain barrels in the rain. That shit sucks. That's not going to work very well. But if it's dry today and you build your rain barrels up, you build out your infrastructure. That's what I was talking about before, right? It's not necessarily fun to do that, and you might get thirsty while it's happening because you don't have enough water, right? But
Right.
if you build out your infrastructure in this kind of way, then when the rains do come, then you have something to catch that rain, and now you've got water for longer than
Yeah.
just while it's raining. So there's a sense there of like a certain kind of like if you build it, they will come,
Yep.
right?
And I like that in this sense too, because we could also think of this, the rain barrel, as we were talking about before, as that talismanic magic, right? Of making, because what else is a talisman's a catch the sunlight, you know what I mean? Like catch the current light when it's time kind of magic. Um, so yeah, so these sort of practical build out this infrastructure, build out the things that are going to be ready for when the water hits, and increasing your luck that way. I think is a really good application. It's interesting also just to note. So when we read these charts, they're a little more open in questions here. There's two other things that are interesting to note. One is that like that cursor moves around the chart, right? So we see it in the eighth house, but we also see it in the sixth house, and we also see it in the fifth house. So it's taking up a lot of energy in this chart. That Saturn figure is very strong in these placements. And
I
so
did say do the boring thing like 6 times.
you did, and it's very much here. It's like fifth house, like gambling, having some sexy times, doing the arts. Yeah, fucking build your rain barrel. Like employees, working with people, getting gigs, doing this. Yeah, build your rain barrel. Like
Sure.
it's very on that kind of energy. So the other piece that's interesting here is, so we read the chart, and then you'll notice there's that one little figure off to the side, that's the sentence. Okay. And that the sentence is basically, if I follow this path, what do I get? What's the outcome? Right. So the judgment tells you like this is the answer to your question. The sentence sort of says this is the outcome from that. Right. So one of the things this points out is emissio. Emissio is loss. So you're like, oh, are the flush clients, right? Like what's the right time to get the flush clients? Well, this is when the timing, this is how. But the outcome of this is emissio, is loss. That doesn't necessarily mean in this case that like you're going to lose money, right? And if we look at there's like in fact the second house has Albus in it, a mercurial figure. It's a lot about like it's good for like smart money. You know what I mean? Like for being a lawyer, you make a ton of money. Like paperwork makes a lot of money. But what emissio could mean here is that you will have to lose other things to get this stuff. Like getting this is going to cause you to lose other things that's in the zone. That could be, and so normally I would throw another might throw another chart or throw some cards, say like, hey, what is the loss that's at the end of this kind of thing that's showing up? And maybe I'll throw some cards here in a second. We can kind of take a look. We can both throw cards and see what it looks like. But but
We're
there's
gonna take
something
up the
that,
whole podcast doing this
yeah,
one
man.
read.
Yeah. But it's what do you
Shout
you
out to
know
you, Sarah. We like you a lot.
but it's what is you're gonna have to lose some stuff in the process. And again, loss is not always bad. You lose a fever, that's a good thing. You know what I mean?
Sure,
Like you
sure.
lose distractions, that's a good thing. But like just keep in
What
mind
came
that
to my
energy is also
mind
there.
when you said loss in this way was like the idea of like if you start hanging out with rich people, then broke ass people don't like you that much anymore.
Right.
They
Right.
like feel kind of betrayed or something like this, and like
Mm-hmm.
and there's a certain amount of like I don't know, how do I feel about that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Right.
the especially if you come from like broke people in your family or something like that, and then you start like hanging out and being bougie and all this kind of thing, like you just suddenly have like expensive taste in wine and shit, and then and like motherfuckers want to talk a bunch of shit, you know what I mean? Because you're like not one of us anymore, and so
Yeah.
there's a certain sense of like maybe potentially losing a sense of community or something like this
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
that could go along with that.
I would say too. And I would also say it probably will cause the loss of other opportunities.
Sure.
That doesn't mean those
Yeah,
are
that's
bad.
interesting. There seems to me to be a bit of tension between the like kind of versus Saturn
Mm-hmm.
situation here. So
Mm-hmm.
there's like if I were going to do Jupiter uh like just if I were just going to Jupiter the shit out of something, then I
Right.
would say yes to everything. Every opportunity that comes to my across my path, I'm going to be like yes to that. Yes, yes,
Right.
yes again, because that is going to it's going to maximize my exposure. It's going to get me into places with people. It's going to get me out here doing work. I'm going to be tired and I'm not going to feel like doing a bunch of shit a lot of times. But if I do it, then I will gain the experience. I'll gain relationships, et cetera, right? And then that is opposed in some ways to the Saturn, which is like, nope, I'm not doing anything that's not that it doesn't feed me. That isn't the
Yeah.
thing that the right thing for me to do. If you have more than three priorities, then you actually have zero priorities, right? And so
Yep.
there's a certain sense of like, if I have to say no to everything that's not those three things that are the most important things to me. And so there's a tension between which of these things do you do. What I have found, or did I find it? What I have devised, which may or may not be a good strategy, is early in the game, say yes to everything until you hit a point where you're like, okay, I'm coasting now, or I've like hit a certain level of
Mhm.
something. I've heard it hit a certain level of experience. I've got these kinds of relationships and these whatever, right? I've established something, and then say no to everything but the right stuff at that point.
I
That
like
that
that.
seems to be one of the main tensions that we reveal here.
I like running it as a two-stroke engine too. Like I like running it and what like you're describing of like hit that Jupiter until it doesn't till it kind of doesn't quite doesn't quite seem the same. You know what I mean? And then kick in the Saturn, cut some things out, and then kick the Jupiter in again. Um,
Although, what I did say during the astrology part of this was do the shit out of your Saturn right now, and
right.
Jupiter will show up next year.
Yes, and to be clear, that's right. So right now it's even though we were just talking about this theory of like one than the other, it's Saturn now.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jupiter. It's going to kick in later, right? Like
Right.
that's the yeah. And I think that shows up in this chart too. Of like
Okay.
you kind of need the luck, but you
So,
got to do the
yeah,
Saturn.
and on the practical level, like again, I don't know what this person is trying to do, so I can't speak to it specifically, but I can sort of think about my own journey here and think about like, okay, so getting a website up that is cute and
Mhm.
that is streamlined in such a way that people can just go there and buy the thing, and they're not confused about any of the things, or it's like all the links are taking
It's
you to
just
the right
clear
places and
and
stuff like
good.
this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right, exactly. Like this sort of infrastructure is difficult to make happen, but it's super important if you get people to go to your website at all in the first place, which is not an easy task. But once people get to your website, if they get confused when they're there, then they bounce immediately,
Yep,
right?
it's
And
true.
so it's important to have that Saturn piece handled already so that you can once you start saying yes to everything, then it's your funnel, right? You
Hmm.
get people in the door, and then some people actually make it to like giving you the money.
Yeah, and this is this is day job stuff for me too, but this like organizing like it works every fucking time. Like there's a reason this exists because the name of the game is if you have 100 people who come and 80% of them click the next link and you know what I mean, it just goes on down, you end up with a fair amount of clients at the end,
Sure.
right?
Hmm.
But you're right. But if you don't, if there, I mean, half the stuff I do at work is telling people like, sir, you have eviscerated your own funnel. You have put holes in the wrong places. This is not good. You know.
Right.
Um,
And it's not
so
easy to do either,
not easy.
like
No.
if you don't know what you're doing already, or if you are, one of the things that I run into all the time is I have natal Jupiter in Gemini. And so it's like, I like want to do all the different things, like multi-talented or whatever, you know what I mean? And so what I end up doing is like make everything super squirrely. And so like people will show up, people will like follow me. I'll play a show doing music, and then people will follow me on Instagram and be like, "What the fuck is this astrology stuff? This is not what I'm here for," you know. and
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
just and it's a mess, and I don't know what to do with it. And so I'm just like, give them the astrology, and you know,
You gotta
it's gonna be
start
what it's gonna be over
maintaining
here.
multiple socials and have
Yeah,
a
but am I
funnel for
gonna
each
run
one.
multiple social media
No, man.
accounts?
No, I don't want you
No,
to do that. I don't want
I'm
you to
not
waste your
doing
time.
that. I
No.
I hardly run this one. I
Uh,
could do way more. I'm not doing that shit.
so I feel like though, I feel like we got something for Sarah here. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like
Yeah,
we got some timings, we got some strategies. I feel like this is a good thing. And like, listen,
Sarah got the hookup just now. Let's be real.
if you like this sort of thing and you want
Uh-huh.
us to play around on your chart and have a good time and get nerdy about shit, um, hit Zamboni's form up. Like it's going to be, we really do enjoy doing this stuff. So and it's a
Yeah,
privilege
for
and it's
sure.
nice to actually get to work together on something. So we appreciate you,
Yeah, so
Sarah.
just
Thank you for sending it in.
yeah, you're right. Exactly. Shout out to Sarah for going to ZamboniFunk.com/store and checking out the link there where you can send things into the podcast. But then also, like a lot of people didn't get chosen. We choose by a lottery. And
Yeah.
so if you sent something in, then feel free to send something in next time also. Like
Yeah.
ain't no thing about that. We're happy to do this. But then also, if we didn't get to you, then you can go to wilkinsbryan.com and get a geomancy reading for yourself. That will not happen on the air in front of all of everybody.
No,
Um,
be very private. I'll answer all kinds of strange and dark questions that you want to have to keep private. I'm fine.
totally.
Whatever you
Yeah,
want,
yeah,
man.
yeah. I get a lot of like addiction and stuff like that that
Yep.
comes through my door, and I'm super happy to read for these kinds of things or other sordid affairs that like you feel guilty about something like I don't need to put you on blast in front of the whole
Yeah,
world.
exactly. Yeah. Although I was definitely going to go to more perverted places than addiction. Now I feel like, that was actually nice. That's a good thing to do for
Yeah,
people.
I get
Yeah.
actually way less perversion than I might like.
Same.
Um,
Same.
it's I get a lot of addiction. A lot of people are going through addiction stuff, and listen, I fucking feel you. You
Yeah, man.
know?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think yeah, I get a lot of job stuff, which is actually great.
Mm,
I really like job stuff because I think you can it's very geomancy is a very practical system and a very animistically spiritual system. And I think that taking care of our material needs is a spiritual act. So like I like to get in and try to help people out that way. So yeah. And you can have Zamboni. Obviously, he already gave the website, but you can have Zamboni elect things and help you find good timings for the things that are coming up in your life. Look at your natal chart, do your year aheads, which I always mention because mine is so good. I got a heads up, by the way, that this time would be like crazy good for work stuff, and but a lot of work from Zamboni, and that's exactly what's been going on for me the last like month and a half in particular. Just like yep, it's all coming down the pipe and I got to work really hard to get it, but it's all right there, so it's
yeah.
been, but I was ready for it. You know what I mean? Like I actually scheduled part of my year and timings around, knowing this was going to be a busy time and it has paid off. So
Mm, that's that rain barrel shit right there. Like,
that's that rain barrel shit.
I know the rains are coming at this time, so let me make
Yep.
sure that my shit is ready to go, and I'm not conflicting with other things that I'm like trying to do.
Yeah.
Let the rains come.
It's good stuff. Zamboni actually asked me to tell a story earlier. I'm gonna jump into it because
Yeah, hit it.
so if you've gotten a reading from me or if you get a reading from me in the future, you we did a little square thing up here tonight so people could easily see what the chart was and things like that. But I am not in my own making of charts. I am not allowed by one of my spirits to use a square chart.
Way to like skirt that rule, by the way. Way to be like, listen, I just went to the website. I ain't make this chart myself. I just
No,
asked
I mean,
the internets to make it.
look,
I don't know what I
look,
was supposed to do.
you can't see it but
I
like there's
can't see
a
that shit at all. Yeah.
hold on, there we go. Yeah. I
Uh-huh.
got to make round shit. I'm required. Like I can talk to you guys later, but me personally, no, I'm not allowed to do that shit. So,
Hmm.
and the reason is I have a weird patron for geomancy. So in fact, when I mentioned this to Dr. Al, he was like, who are people that people use for like patrons of their geomantic arts? And I was like, St. Catherine. He was like, never heard of that. Uh-huh.
Good.
But For those of you who don't know Saint Catherine of Alexandria, she is a completely mythical saint.
Hmm.
And she is largely a little problematic in the sense that she's actually kind of a gloss for the pagan philosopher and astronomer and astrologer, Hypatia, who was killed by Christians. And then about 200 years go by, and the Christians kind of remember this as a cool story, and they sort of turn her into Saint Catherine. But I personally honor both in my practice. I honor them as a sort of combined figure. But
We love
Saint
syncretism around these
yeah,
parts.
exactly. This is what we got to do. So Saint Catherine, there's lots of different versions of her story. I totally suggest people read the whatever versions you can find. But the basics are she's this incredibly knowledgeable like philosopher. She can argue anybody about in this version the beauty of Christianity. She's a former pagan who converts, this kind of stuff, and the emperor gets mad and wants her to like convert back and everything else, and she keeps arguing everybody, and every time they start talking to her she just makes more and more Christians, and so like that's no good. Got to stop that nonsense. So they decide to execute her, to martyr her, and they do so by threatening to break her body on the wheel. And so they bring out the wheel of torture where they're going to tie her down and crack her bones and do all this kind of stuff. And St. Catherine touches it, and in the love of Christ, and this is really where my devotion to the saint comes in, and the wheel breaks. And the reason that the wheel breaks is this is meant to be a story to everybody about how love and compassion and knowledge in that way of like Sophia, you know what I mean? That wisdom, like wanting to know, wanting to be the romance of it, that breaks the wheel of worldly suffering. It breaks the cycle of suffering that we get trapped on.
Okay. Okay.
So I encountered her through a lot of different ways. She's also great for cars, in case people are wondering. And when I started approaching a scholarly art,
Is that cars or cards?
car automobiles,
Cars, like
yes,
driving. Vroom,
yeah,
vroom.
she likes shit with
Wheels.
wheels. She likes shit with
Yeah, yeah.
wheels.
Okay.
Yeah,
Dig it.
yeah. So when I was thinking about what does it mean to be wise and be a diviner, right, and to dig into
Mhm.
this stuff, I was like, well, I want to break people's suffering. Like I don't want. That's what I think this is about, is relieving suffering. And St. Catherine was like, hello, hello,
Okay.
I'm here I'd like to help out. And I was like, well, great, that's great. We work together on a bunch of stuff. She's great. I love her. And she's like, yeah, no square charts. I was
Oh,
like,
right. Because she likes wheels.
she likes wheels, man. She likes wheels. And Stephen Skinner has all these old. The wheel chart was used a lot in the Middle Ages, but it's hard to fucking draw, right? Nobody wants to just draw a circle and draw a pie chart of 12. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like nobody
Yeah.
likes
It
doing that.
sucks. I don't like doing that.
No. And so that's why the square chart was made, because it's a lot easier to fucking draw straight lines and get it done.
Sure.
But what this has meant is that I cannot, in my creation of charts, use any of the automated programs, which almost all use the square chart, which means I've had to do this by hand every time I sit down to do a chart, which means I've learned a lot more about the math of it and
Hmm.
making of it and everything else. So it was one of those really lovely kind of saint things where they give you a taboo
Mm.
or a task,
Hmm.
and you're like, this is some bullshit, but fine. Like I don't, it's real like Mr. Miyagi paint the fence kind of situation. And then you end up realizing like, oh, I learned a lot by devoting myself
Sure.
this way. So
Okay.
yeah.
So how you getting away with putting it out here for the whole public? Not even just doing it like quietly in your room or something like that,
Oh,
but just like putting the whole square chart on blast like this.
because I didn't do that. There's no calculation in what I did for that. That's just something that I like shared with you guys. You know what I mean? Like it's irrelevant to my own production of the chart. Like that's the rule. I have to produce it by hand. I know you think. Listen, I cleared
Okay.
it.
All
I
right. Yeah,
tested. I
that's what's
tested the
up.
waters. I was like, "Is this good?" She's like, "Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it."
All right.
Like,
Cool. We let it
um,
rock.
yeah.
All right. So
So,
I have a question for you then.
cool.
Because if we think about wisdom and all this type of thing, like wisdom and faith and
Yeah.
that kind of thing, breaking suffering and that sort of stuff, right? I have, for my whole life, I've been sort of interested in cultivating wisdom.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm at a point now in my life where I'm like, I don't know how wise that really is.
The art, the wanting to cultivate wisdom.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I'm like 11 years old and I'm like, I'm gonna be wise. Like,
Did you grow up? I know you had church growing up. Did you grow up with the story of Solomon
no.
choosing wisdom?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. So this was a big part of my choosing wisdom. So Solomon has a dream where he's going to be king, and
Okay.
God's talking to him. It's like, you can have whatever you want. What do you want, Solomon? What do you want?
Uh-huh.
And usually in all these different versions, he sees all kinds of cool ass treasures and shit.
Uh-huh.
And Solomon's like, I want wisdom, and God's like, smart, smart. But like Solomon's life is tricky, man. Do you know what I mean? Like he's got all these wives he's got to take care of. He's got to build this temple. He's got to do all like there's a lot of like he's wise. He's really wise. But at the same time, wisdom required a lot of him. You know what I mean? It was not an easy life to
Mm-hmm.
choose to be
Mm-hmm.
wise. Um,
Right. Yeah. And ease would be cute, maybe. I don't know. I don't know that
I,
easy is possible,
I was gonna say I
honestly.
don't know her, so
Right. Yeah, yeah, totally. So like yeah, I mean, I don't know that being unwise would be easier necessarily. But like, I don't know. I think about that shit sometimes and all right, so here's the thing that what I'm running into a lot is the game theory of the whole thing. You know what
okay,
I mean? So like in a competitive environment where you're trying to outcompete somebody else,
mm-hmm.
then the if there are two competitors and one of them is wise and merciful and the other one is ruthless, then the ruthless motherfucker is getting paid and the wise one is not. And
What? Mm.
because there's shit that the ruthless one can do that the wise one can't do. Ruthless
Why is
can do whatever he wants, and wise is going to be like, there's certain things I'm not going to do because it's not God's path, or you know what I mean. That wouldn't be so nice,
so
shit like
well?
this.
So why
I
why
wouldn't be in
is wisdom
integrity.
not ruthless?
Why is wisdom not ruthless? Okay, I mean, sure. All right. So you want to get all like Sun Tzu, like maybe you gotta cut a throat sometimes. And I'm
I
not
do.
mad at like sometimes you gotta be violent and shit like this. Like our first time on the podcast together, I was like, listen, I'm okay with villainy
Yeah,
and I stand behind that and I feel very much like a villain sometimes. But the but there's a certain amount of like
yeah,
cutthroat business shit. You know what I mean? Lying, deception, you know what I mean? Things that
yeah.
I'm
It's not wise. It's not wise.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's not
So,
dicey.
um, so I think the first premise we have to reject here is that there's only two people in the game.
Sure. Okay.
There's never just two people in the game for our lives. Not like in real life. You
Okay.
know what I mean?
Sure.
Um, the second is that like, what is our time frame? Like, so
Okay.
and I'm not going to say that like Jeff Bezos is not going to die happy in his bed. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not,
Right.
right. Because I don't know. I don't know for what it's like to be a billionaire.
Sure.
There's
It's
lots.
probably hard because life is hard, and as
Yeah,
long as a motherfucker is living, then it's probably hard out here, right? But
it
like,
doesn't look great to me. I got to be honest. Like it looks bad in a lot of ways to me for the things that make me feel joyful, you know?
sure.
Um, and so it actually looks pretty unwise to me to be the kind of billionaire that, a Jeff Bezos or an Elon Musk is. In that, if you gave me that much money, My goal would be that every child in America says my name with joy. Do you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
I would want the legacy of like, so here's the comparison. She's not a billionaire, although she's pretty close, but I love me some Dolly Parton as far as rich people goes. And
Sure.
she gives any kid under, in America, she gives them all books.
Right.
That feels wise.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love it.
Right.
Here for it all day. You know,
Immortality. You know.
immortality, sure. Yeah, cool. I'm with it. You have dodged the question.
I'll go back. I'll go back. I don't want to dodge. I don't want to dodge.
I yeah, I just feel like, it'd be a lot of things out here where, I feel myself getting outcompeted because I'm not trying to do things that make me feel sleazy. You
Hmm.
know, like it's that concept of like people who are less talented than you, but who are ready to play the game
Hmm.
are gonna outcompete you. And so like because we talked about this last time, we was talking about
Yeah.
like doing like I want to write in such a way that Hermes Trismegistus feels good
Right.
like coming through me as the vessel, and I feel all right putting that stamp on there, and I don't even got to put
Right.
my name on there because Hermes Trismegistus is like I'm just in it with the whole thing,
Right.
right? You know what I mean?
Right. I'm with the
Channeling spirits.
wise.
Exactly. Very wise to do it this way, right? Requires
Yeah.
a lot of talent and all this kind of thing. And then, but there's going to be a lot of people out here who aren't on that tip, who are going to sell more books.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And like, I, I I don't know how you're gonna. I don't know. I just don't know how you are gonna argue with these dollar signs this way. You know what I mean? Or all the rest of it. Maybe dollar signs is like a dumb marker of success, but like, depends on how hungry you are. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no, I definitely resist the idea that dollar signs are a bad marker. Do you know what I mean? I don't think they're the whole story, but I think if you don't have at least a significant amount of dollar signs, it does not feel good
Yeah, I
in
would
the
rather be Jeff Bezos than starving.
right. Right. And I think people who say the other way are frankly being a little disingenuous. Now, I think you can probably pull off a sort of like ascetic monastic lifestyle if that is your true desire and your true game and you can feel really free doing so, right?
Mhm.
But I
Can't be
think
done.
you do need that to be the goal. You know what I mean? Like that needs to be your highest good very clearly. And so this brings me to my first quibble with the thing is what is your real good, your real desire. Now I think a certain amount of financial stuff is part of that. You know what I mean? Like it is for me
Important.
anyway. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you know one of the things that's fun to sit with is like, what if you had $250 million right now? Does that
Uh-huh.
feel good? Like really? Like
For me? Yeah,
yeah, you
feel
you
great.
you go into the room, there's $250 million in it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Right.
Amazing. Love it.
Cool.
Do all type of shit with this.
Right. Because it just showed up free. Do you know what I mean? With no strings attached. It's
Sure.
out of the universe.
Uh-huh.
It's easy to do. But then if it's like, what if you have to betray your best friend to get
Yeah.
that $250 million? You
Sure.
know, it starts to not feel quite as good. There, maybe for some folks, it feels fine.
Sure.
Um, but the thing is,
And
like,
it's not like if me and my bestie are like besties today, and then it's like somebody's like, you could press this button and your bestie is just going to drop dead.
right?
And but you'll have $250 million. Like that's not how the shit goes. You know
No,
what I
it's
mean?
not.
Like
No, it's
it's
what it is you cut him
you
off
boil
the
a
album.
frog. Say what?
What it is you cut him out of the album, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how it actually
Sure.
happens. Is like people do something together and they steal the business, or
Uh-huh.
they they
Uh-huh.
cut they cut people
And it
out.
and you boil the frog on it. You know what I mean? Like it gets to a certain point where like, like things are building up and there's like and how many meetings did your bestie miss that you were
Sure.
at, or the why there's a reason why your name is going on shit and the bestie's name is not going on shit. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
You know, there's like stuff, there's justifications for that
Oh
and all
yeah,
this
yeah.
kind of thing.
It's
You
a,
know
it's
what
a
I mean?
long way. So I like, and I don't know the story well enough. I just like the internet dumb version. You know what I mean? So like, if there's experts on this, they probably disagree. But the Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak story with Apple,
Okay.
where like Wozniak was more interested in making cool shit, making the technology. He did a lot of like work with like getting stuff out to school kids. You know what I mean? And then in the end, he gets cut out of the company by Steve Jobs, who goes on to do whatever fucking Steve Jobs stuff. Everybody thinks he's some kind of messiah. He does his thing. Um, Wozniak retains a ton of respect though. Like people have a lot of respect for him and what he did, and they listen to him and stuff. He never made the kind of money that Steve Jobs made, and he never
Hmm.
got the kind of like messianic attention that
Hmm.
Jobs did. He seemed pretty okay with it, at least by the end. You know what I mean? Like he seemed
Sure.
happy with the life he led. But, is Steve Jobs really, was he better off for cutting his buddy out?
Sure.
You know, well, he could achieve what he wanted, which was to be a single messianic figure by cutting other people out.
Sure.
His personal life seems pretty ragged. And,
Sure. Hmm.
so again, it's like, where do you put the value on these things?
Yeah.
Because I think
What
there
kind of
is
life
a
do you want to live and
cost.
stuff?
Yeah, I think, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. There's a cost to picking up the blade,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know. You might be able to be ruthless and get some things, but and I know that's a little bit hackneyed in the sense of like the billionaire's sad because he doesn't get to live in his hometown anymore. It's like a little Hallmark kind of feel, right?
Yeah, and I'd be feeling some type of way about that. Be like, oh, he can't sleep at night. It's like, oh, he really he can't sleep at
Right,
night. Are you
right,
sure?
right.
How do you know? Because are you sleeping with him?
Because he paid you, because he's got the
Right?
money to pay
Like,
you. Yeah. And and some people try to settle this out with karma and stuff too, but I think it's awful
uh-huh.
presumptuous to know what the karma of an individual is. And you know, I don't know that Steve Jobs didn't come on this planet to create a whole bunch of like things that have been great for humans, and that path, maybe that did require him to act in a ruthless way from time to time. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't like, this is where you and I get closer on the like what is even happening with the universe. You know what I mean? Because it's
Sure.
like, when is the organism protecting itself? What is happening? I don't know. Um, but here's the thing: is so one of my favorite. You mentioned Sun Tzu earlier. I do like this Taoist approach to things a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a school of thinking in Taoism called the Dark School, and their 36 strategies got really popular in Go, which is how I came across them playing Go. But like, it's strategies like this, and these are considered wisdom, right? Like this is
Mm-hmm.
wisdom. Um, let's see. My favorite is the series. Here's some of my. I'll pick the funny ones. Uh, Loot a burning house.
Loop?
Loot, loot.
Loot. Oh yeah, loot the
Steal
burning
shit from
house.
a burning house, right?
They want you to run into a burning house.
And steal shit.
They want you to run inside. It's burning
Yeah,
down right now.
yeah.
There's
Go get
active
it.
flames, and they want you to run inside this house.
Yeah, go fucking get it. Get your shit, right?
S-
Because you're gonna get away
I'm
with
here
it.
for the theft, but running inside a burning building seems like a terrible idea. This does not seem like a winning strategy to me.
Hide your dagger in a smile,
Okay, yeah.
right?
See, that's what I'm saying. This is what.
Right.
Yes. Uh huh.
Let the plum tree die to save the peach, which in this case, in the sort of Chinese metaphor in the story it's connected to, means like you got to cut your losses sometimes.
Sure.
You know, if you chance
One
upon a
time.
sheep, be sure to steal it.
Sure. If you chance upon a sheep, be sure to steal it. Yeah, I mean,
I'm trying to
that's
find the
so good.
one of my ones that's like, it's a really great one. Where is it? Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, it's number 3 actually in the list. Murder with a borrowed knife.
Yeah, absolutely. You should do
Don't use your
that.
own fucking knife.
Right. Don't be dumb. What are you
Don't
talking
be
about?
dumb, right? And there's
If
a
you're gonna be a
way
crook, be a good crook.
to be a good crook. And loot from a burning house is about being bold when there's an opportunity,
Sure.
right? And so there's a quality of like in the West, the virtue we talk about here is prudence, prudentia, right? Like right action at the right time. And that
Mm,
right action at the right time to maximize your outcomes could be something that requires boldness, requires sort of stuff. But you got to think about long-term consequences too, and whether you can live with them.
sure.
You know,
Yeah. Can you deal with the smoke inhalation?
right, right. Are you fast enough to get your get your fat ass back out of there again before you
Right?
fry? You know,
Yeah, you read a lot of good things right now, and I'm not about this run into a burning building shit. I'm not on the team. No.
shit, man. I gotta find the comedian. I gotta look this up sometime. But the basic joke is something like this: is like, why are there so many Irish firefighters and like white firefighters? It's like it's the only people dumb enough on earth to run inside a
Sure.
burning building for money. Do you know what I mean? And like that's my people. That's who I'm talking about. Like this is lot of running a burning building kind of shit in my family background. Like that's what we do. And
Sure. Well, I mean, firefighters get pussy.
that's
Be
true
real
too.
about that.
That's
You know
true.
what I mean? Like if you
Dude,
if
we should get
like
this reminds me we should get Fireman Kevin on here sometime.
yo, that is a compliment to fireman Kev. Shout out to you, Kev.
But
Because you can see him outside the fire station talking about what's up.
yeah,
What
exactly.
are we
Yeah.
doing over here? What? Oh my God, is it really that red?
Oh my god. Did the fire get really hot? I bet it's so hot in there when they're in the
Right?
fire. Yeah. Um, so but there is something to like, you got to know the timing, right, for this kind of stuff. And I think that like the unwise application of ruthlessness fucks you over.
Sure.
But the wise application of bold or I wouldn't say ruthless because I think that carries into it the idea that you haven't really thought it out. You're just kind of being indiscriminate. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but of bold tactics and thinking about the ethics of the actual situation rather than having like just a blanket thing that you apply to everything without thinking about it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's not wise, and I think that's one reason sometimes wisdom looks villainous.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't.
You're still not happy with it.
I'm not happy with it.
Why aren't you happy with it? What are you unhappy with?
Well, I'm unhappy because like the you never get to a point when you're doing your like faithful and just and ethical thing, then like you never get to a point where you're not like getting out. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm not getting to a point where I'm not getting out competed, right? Maybe this is like a personal failing, right? Maybe I'm not as like strong or as much of a badass as I want to be or something like this. But like I feel like there's a certain amount of like willingness to play with that fire that is important to major success or
Mm-hmm.
even I don't know, even like good success, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
I feel like I get out competed, you
Mm-hmm.
know, by the and I don't know, maybe I'm like justifying to myself, maybe I'm like I have integrity, you know? So like that could be what's going on here, but like I don't know, I just feel like there's a certain amount when we think about the game theory of it, like there's a certain amount of like bad faith actors who are gonna be present in the system who are gonna get shit sometimes. You know what I mean?
Sure. So game theory was one of the things I really loved studying when I was going to be a spy. I was doing international relations.
Sure.
Um, I'm shit at the math, which is why I didn't end up getting a PhD in
Yeah,
international relations, because the actual fucking math of game theory is like hard.
sure.
Like you look at it, you're
Uh-huh.
like, you see like the prisoner's dilemma box, and you're like, I don't know, there's one over here and one over there. What's so hard about this? And then you watch A Beautiful Mind and you realize like, oh shit, that guy's like went fucking crazy doing all this math. Like that's like I'm not anywhere close to that smart.
Right.
Um,
I don't like
but
that
so
math very much, so I got into astrology.
this is like me getting into geomancy to learn no astrology. That's the same thing. Um, but let's take some classic game theory games that are about this, actually, that are kind of interesting. So there's
Okay.
Jean-Jacques Rousseau had a really classic one he called the Stag Hunt, right? And the Stag Hunt is this idea that if you get a bunch of people together, the village is starving, and if they cooperate, they can bring down a big prey like a stag. Everybody eats.
Hmm.
But Rousseau thought that people couldn't be trusted. By the way, in the flying in the absolute face of hunter-gatherer history, we clearly cooperated. Do you know what I mean? Like we clearly
Sure.
did this. But anyway, he was wrong about a lot of stuff. But his theory was that you'll get defectors from the stag hunt. So like somebody will be like, "Oh, there's a rabbit. I'll go get the rabbit, and
Hmm.
I'll be full, and I don't have to worry about the stag anymore." And if you get enough defectors,
Hmm.
then you can't get the stag. So
Sure.
people acting shady seemingly outcompete, right? So
Yeah,
that's a
yeah, yeah.
game
And
theory
this gets to
principle,
your time horizon situation, right? Like
right?
if you really want to continue to eat, like one full belly will last you one night.
Right.
But it's the whole like I store my meat in the body of my brothers
Hmm.
situation,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like they if they're eating because I killed something,
I
then
can eat them later. Wait, is that not what that means?
but like if it gets to that.
This is, by the way, the second time on this podcast I've made like a pretty serious sounding cannibalism joke. And it's like I only got like two more before people start looking into my background a little more. Like that's
Well,
the
that's why
limit.
your background is blurry right now. We
It's
don't, we
very
don't need to see
blurry.
what's going on back there.
There's no
There
long
certainly
pig in
are,
this house.
right. Uh-huh. And over Zoom, I have no idea what it smells like in there.
Bacon. It always smells like bacon in my house. No particular
Word.
reason.
Yeah, well, I mean, like sounds like a pretty good way to live to me.
Right. But your point there too of like that it is the time horizon, and not necessarily just in the sense of like one belly, but it's like when you come back and you're like, hey guys, I ate a rabbit and everybody else went hungry. um they're not inviting you on the next stag hunt. You know what I mean? Like
Sure. Oh,
you
you're the
sold
one that they
everybody.
choose to eat next.
Exactly, you sold everybody out, and
Hmm.
there's consequences for that. And so Rousseau is all about setting up consequences to avoid defection. um but I don't, like I said, I don't think that's actually how humans work, right? Like I don't think that's how we've survived.
Okay. Yes. I just have been thinking just now about like, or well, for a little while now, but I just remembered just now, like the idea of a major competitor, like big business or
Mm-hmm.
something like this, like the
Yeah.
famous one, the figurehead that you know about, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
Uh, like maybe copywriting something. So
Mm-hmm.
like there's a certain astrologer who I know about who copyrighted the Thema Mundi recently. And by recently, I mean like in within my lifetime. You know,
What?
right? Exactly. It's like
What?
how are you gonna? Has been around from 2,000 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like how are you gonna copyright the Thema Mundi? And like he didn't copyright the Thema Mundi. He copyrighted
Right.
this. You can't use this
Presentation of it.
document. You
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. You gotta make up your own Thema Mundi. You gotta do your thing with the circles
You got to
and you
make the
gotta
wheel chart. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you gotta make the wheel chart yourself and
Yeah.
all this. Like you can't use this copy of the Thema Mundi, right?
Right.
But like so like I think about that, and so I was complaining about that one time, and I like as I complained for a little while, I was like, really, you just need to charge this to the game, like
Mm-hmm.
hating on the baddest player in the game, like gets you nowhere. Like,
right. Impedes
fucking make
you.
one yourself, bro. Like,
Right.
why are you? What are you complaining for? You know?
Right. That points to something, and you've said it a little bit earlier too, that I really like, which I don't think you were doing, right? You were making fun of this a little bit, is people who use quote unquote wisdom as the justification for why they're not getting ahead,
Sure.
right? Like, like they get mad that that guy copyrighted the theme of Mundi,
Mm,
and they spend all their time being mad as an excuse to do their own shit, right?
sure.
Like, because you could think of like, I don't know. I was thinking about this guy who guy recently who he was he's one of those domain squatter guys. He just like when he thought Kamala Harris was going to be president, he just started buying anything that had like a Midwestern governor. Like he just bought all the combinations of those names. And then now it's Harris Walls, and he's like, fuck yeah, I own harriswalls.com, pay me 15K, which he got paid. He got
Sure.
paid. And everybody's like, is that moral? Is that, I'm like, first off, it's funny as fuck. Like,
Right.
like
Totally.
it's also like really American in a way that makes me like really happy. You know what I mean?
It's
Like,
that is the most American thing you
it's
could
the most
possibly
American
do.
thing ever, And like, I'm not gonna be mad about that, right? But it depends on your framing, right? You could be like, what an opportunist. What is he's getting value from not really doing anything. He's just holding stuff hostage from the people who
Sure.
quote deserve it, whatever. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, no, he was smart enough to have a toll bridge. Do you know what I mean? And you have to pay the toll.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so this is what I'm saying about charge it to the game, right? Like
Right.
this is how the game operates. This is what the game is. Now you
Right.
might not like that this is what the game is,
Right.
but didn't nobody ask you? We out here playing this game right now. Or is you
And there's
hooping to what?
and and there's a little bit of that I think is important with the wisdom thing too. And like I tend to think about this in terms of like fighting sports because that's just what I know.
Sure.
But like um, if you I don't know, did you hear about this idiot YouTube boxer wants to fight Mike Tyson?
No.
Okay, yeah. So he's one of the I can never get him straight. I always get confused if it's Logan Paul or Jake Paul. I think it's Jake. Anyway, he set
Somebody
up a
wants to
fight.
fight a 60-year-old man.
He set up a fight with Mike Tyson. Right
Okay.
now, he's in his 20s. He's got a good right hand. He's a reasonable boxer, but he does a lot of promo stuff. You know what I mean? Like he's setting up these fake fights and like
Sure.
everything else. It's fine. I think he sort of woke up one day and realized that like he was trying to play a game in which he was going to fight a 60-year-old man who had some rep to like get a lot of buzz. Everybody makes money, you know, and he's probably going to come out okay. And then I think he saw some footage of the fact that Mike Tyson is still a fucking tiger human and
Sure.
realized he was going to get seriously hurt. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Like, because the last thing that goes is power. And that dude, he might be a little slower, but you don't want that. But I do not want that. That is death in a tiny package. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want it. So he's tried all kinds of things to get out of the fight. So he recently canceled it.
Mhm.
Came on YouTube, told everybody he canceled the fight.
Mhm.
Tyson responded by saying, because he knows the actual game they're playing, he said, I'm going to sue you for $350 million.
Mm.
The boxing match has never been the fight.
Hmm.
The fight is about how Mike Tyson makes $350 million.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
match is a tool for how he makes that money.
Right.
Right. And so if you try to take that away from him, he's going to get his money somehow.
Sure.
Right. And so the guy's backed up and been like, no, I didn't actually cancel it. It was just a thing, like because he realized what fight he's actually in. So I think sometimes that's a thing too, is not recognizing what game you are in. You're showing up to play basketball with a soccer ball and being
Mm.
mad that nobody wants to play soccer, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So, but you can also do it inside the game. So like let's say the game is basketball, right? there's lots of ways to be good at basketball. Muggsy
Sure.
Bogues is short as shit, and he was good at
Sure.
basketball, right? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
so, but you got to know how to play your basketball game.
Right. Uh-huh. Indeed. Indeed. Yeah, play better. It's like
My,
the only
yeah, my sensei, my karate sensei growing up, was a black man named Jerry Lemon, and he came up through a lot of segregation, right? Like he literally just like he had people shooting at him for drinking out of a water fountain. You know what I mean? He was the first kid to integrate his high school. That dude could fight. Do you know what I mean? Like he
sure.
grew up
Hmm.
redneck territory. Jerry can fucking fight. You know.
Sure.
Um, and we would go to these point sparring tournaments, and like it's all judged by everybody who's they got their own student in the thing, or they're friends with so and so. It's like the most corrupt shit ever, right? And it's so easy to say that doesn't count, this does count, all this sort of stuff. And he used to say to me all the time, he was like, you got to be good enough that they can't cheat you.
Right.
And that was from some hard won experience in his life that he was passing on to like a pretty privileged dumb white kid who was sitting in his house a lot. Um, but when you're talking about like you got to be good at the game, it's like sometimes you got to be good enough that they can't cheat you. You know,
Yeah, which is like an impossible level of good.
it's
You
yes,
you got
and
to
he
be
wasn't
so good,
right.
especially once we get into the place where it's like it's like subjective in
Hmm.
any regard, like
Yeah,
you like everybody loves to talk about Michael Jordan, and so it's very easy to look at, okay, did the ball go in the hoop or did it not go in the hoop? You know what I
right,
mean? So
right,
very simple to that's an easy metric, you know what I mean? But when you get into the space of like, oh, well, did it count? Did it not count? Was it, like can we talk about it at all? Like how
right,
postmodern can we get with this? Everything is socially constructive. This isn't real. Like
right.
those things we can talk you out of whatever. You know what I mean? When we get into that place, then like and everything is cheating. Like
Yeah,
the whole
it's
game
just
is cheating. That's what I'm
yeah,
talking about. You know what I mean? Like that's in that space where we actually do live a I don't know, is it a majority of time? A lot of time, you
sure,
know, a wide margin of time that we're in the space where like it's kind of all cheating,
sure,
on the internet and all the rest of it, right? Then like it, and then when you get into that place where it's like kind of all cheating, maybe, then, or like maybe more than you want it to be, then we get back to this like wise or ethical place. And it's like,
right.
okay, how willing am I to cheat on something? You know what I mean? And there's a certain amount of like, sometimes you got to lie to a tyrant. Okay,
Yep,
cool. Down for
yep.
that, right? But then there's a gradient before we get to
Hmm.
the spot where it's like, okay, I'm not down to lie anymore and
Yeah,
or cheat anymore, and like and if you got to play the game and you got to be bad than a motherfucker, and you got to be so bad that they can't cheat you on it, but then cheating is the whole game, so you got to be better at cheating than the other cheaters are, and then you know what I mean, like it's just
yeah,
shit is, and then there comes a certain point where it's like, well, shit, maybe I should just cheat then.
right. This is this is the Lance Armstrong story, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. The Tour de France, entirely designed to kill humans. Like that race is a fucking like if you're going into that natural, that race is fucking crazy,
Sure.
right? And over time, people were like, everybody's doing something to try to get through this race. Back in like the 20s and stuff, they're like doing cocaine. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It doesn't it doesn't help. But people
Okay.
are people are trying all kinds of shit to survive this race because it's so crazy. Or another example is like early baseball, where the supposed to be throwing weird signals, and
Say
you're
that one more
supposed to
time.
be
It's in baseball. Oh, we're
the
losing you.
like the cheating was just yeah, we're bouncing in and out a little bit. Just
Uh-huh.
give it a second.
You talking about Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa?
I'm talking 1920s, but like,
Okay.
but Sammy and them, same thing, right? Like,
Doping scandals.
actually, you know what? That's a really good example. Let's talk about Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire for a second. I haven't talked about those guys in for fucking ever. All right.
For real.
So
That was a real big deal when I was in elementary school. Mark McGuire was
same.
playing for a Missouri team. I'm from Missouri. We was like, yo, this guy right here.
And I had a buddy who was a super big Sammy fan, right? Just loved him, right? Like had all his posters and everything else, the Sammy
Uh-huh.
Sosa. So there's a couple things from that time period which are really interesting where people were like, they're juicing. Well, they were taking some shit. But when you go back and look at it compared to like what we're looking at now, like eh, it wasn't like they were like doing creatine and like maybe some stuff, but they weren't like bodybuilder doing trend, like shooting up every week juicing. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't that for one thing.
Sure.
The second is that like I'm not really sure that getting muscular actually helps you hit a home run. Like like
Because you gotta see it. You
you
gotta
gotta
see that
see
pitch
it,
come
you
in.
gotta
You
do all this
gotta
kind of stuff. And
aim.
like your mass does matter. Your ability to put power into the bat, that does matter, right? What the stuff they were doing probably helped them most with was recovery time.
Sure.
Like they were in the game more and so had more chances to hit the ball and so then could get the records going up. But did it help them hit the ball? Not really, you know. But there's a particular Sammy thing that happened where he got in trouble for using a corked bat.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. But what people don't remember is he used it during an exhibition game that was a home run derby. It wasn't a real game.
Sure.
He was there to the point of that game, the actual game happening here was to hit as many home runs as you can to make people really excited about hitting home runs.
Sure.
Like that was the purpose. And then people were like, "Oh, that's Sammy Sosa. He used a corked bat." And we also don't know that everybody else wasn't using a corked bat at that game. Sammy's bat was the one that broke. Right.
Sure. Sure.
He's the
And meanwhile, Sammy Sosa's like, how many goddamn tickets did I sell you?
exactly, because that's the game, right? So, it's like people being mad pro wrestling isn't real, like, but those
Sure.
but those dudes are still really throwing each other. You know what I mean? Like it's you're appreciating the wrong thing
Sure.
in there. So anyway, that long walk is a question to be like, when is it actual cheating? Do you know what I mean? Like when is it a case where you're like hurting other people for your own aggrandizement? You're defecting from the group, right?
Okay.
And when is it like, no, you're playing the game that everybody has agreed to play.
Sure. Sure.
And in a weird way, by playing the virtue path, right, then you're also defecting.
Yeah. Okay. Talk about that a little further.
So let's say that we've all agreed to play a game of poker.
Okay.
And the rules of poker are pretty standard. We're going to be able to bluff. We're going to be able to lie. We're going to be able to like hide our cards, and pretend I got stuff I don't have, everything else.
Nobody's wife feels good about this at all.
Nobody's wife ever feels good about this.
But we're here anyway. Ain't nobody
wives don't feel good about this.
All right, cool.
But actually, I'll just tell this story. So, buddy of mine's dad told me about the scariest game of poker he ever played. They played a version of poker that was loosely called AC Deucey. And it was one of these versions of poker where, like, if you have one card, all of a sudden you win the hand, right? Like, if you high or low, right? So it was a bunch of, like, firefighters and policemen and, like, first responders playing after work, right? And so they're playing and everything else. And this one hand gets crazy. Like, to the point that, like, these two guys are playing back and forth. Everybody else is in the room watching. My buddy's dad was one of the guys, right? And they're playing. People start getting sweaty, by the amount of
Mhm.
money that's in this game. They don't like it anymore, right? Like it's no
Mhm.
longer fun. And it comes to the point where the two men put their paychecks for the month in
Mhm.
the pot.
Mhm.
Everybody leaves except the
Mhm.
two guys because they're
Mhm.
like, I don't even want to be in this room anymore.
Sure.
You guys should have quit. Everyone's mad. Everyone's really, because it was supposed to be a fun game, right?
Uh-huh.
Everybody leaves. It's this guy and the other guy. They look at each other for a minute, and my buddy's dad goes, how about we just split it? And the other guy goes, great. And they never looked at what cards they had. They
Uh-huh.
just took the paychecks back. They split the pot, which technically had other people's money in it, right? But
Sure. Uh-huh.
they'd left the game. They left.
Yeah, they won. Uh-huh. They
They
won
won,
that fair and
right?
square.
Right. But they split it and they walked away.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now I would argue that is very wise,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
That is
Nobody
the
got shot
wise
that night.
play. But that is also cheating. That is not the rules of poker.
Is it cheating?
That's the question. Is it
I
cheating?
don't think that's cheating.
But it's
That
breaking the rules.
forfeiting is
Not a forfeit.
within the rules.
This is not a forfeit.
It's a mutual forfeit.
But you
We
took
both
other people's
decided
money.
forfeit at the same time. That's
But you didn't give everybody else's money back.
how am I get any money back? They ain't even here no more. They
See
left
what I'm
that.
saying?
What I'm supposed to do with this? You
I
what I'm supposed to
agree.
get on? I'm gonna go over to Western Union right now? No.
So the question then is like, but like they made a choice that what, and I would argue that had one of them at that moment said, no, the rules of the game are we show our cards to each other,
Hmm.
that would have been a defection actually from the way this game is really meant to be played. This game
Sure.
is meant to be played about people having a good time and being gentlemen to each other,
Sure.
right? You
Uh-huh.
know,
Uh-huh.
and so that being quote unquote virtuous, being like, no, I insist on the rules of the game being played as writ, would have been the defection.
I don't think your story supports your point.
That's fair. That's
I
fair.
like this
All
story.
right.
I think it's a good story. I think we can learn things from it. But I don't think that is I don't think that's virtue in that moment. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that I don't think that the rules of poker are such that like that because that's not the game that was being played in that moment. You know what I mean? Like if the shit had been on ESPN or something, you know what I mean? Like then you got to play by those rules but then everybody hasn't left the room. ESPN is still filming.
That's true. They are, there's transparency in a way that there wasn't in this other story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, okay, so let's say we're playing an ESPN game. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
sure.
And
Wives still mad.
wives are still mad. The wives who are playing are mad. Everybody's mad. And so I had a buddy who used to do this with a different card game where he would just show you his cards. He would just let you
Okay.
see his cards the whole time.
The whole time, whole
Yeah.
game.
So like if you're playing Texas Hold'em, he would just flip up his two cards so you could see them.
Uh-huh.
Because his argument was the game's actually about math. All this bluffing and stuff is bullshit. And I'll just take my little winnings every time everybody can tell that I got the best hand.
Uh-huh.
It ruins the fucking game. It's no fun. Everybody hates him. Everybody wants to kick the shit out of him.
Uh-huh.
But there's not technically any rule that says you can't just show your cards.
Sure. Uh-huh.
He's like, I'm the virtuous one. You guys are lying and doing all this other kind of bullshit that doesn't, like, and
Sure.
you're mad because I just, why do you care? I showed you my cards. You can see what they are. I don't care.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
People fucking
Okay.
hate it.
Yeah, I can see why you would hate that.
Yeah.
This fucking guy.
This, right? And so
This guy out of here.
he's claiming that he's being virtuous. I don't think he actually is, but you know what I mean? So like, that's the example. There's another example. Maybe play.
Sure. Yeah. Because that's that depends on lying is always bad.
Right. Right.
And
You're
so
applying something that isn't.
yeah.
the
You're
context.
you're applying a blanket statement to to a situation where it's like, my man, that's not what we're doing here right now. Like,
Right.
and
So what is
and
in your success though? So, and like where you feel you get outcompeted or where you feel stuff is going on, right? Like this kind of a thing.
mm-hmm.
You know, is it a case where no, people are harming other people by the way that they're acting? Or is it a case where it's within the context of the game and that's just okay? That's just part of how we all understand how it's supposed to be played.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's harm that goes down, you know. I've had people DM me and talking about like talking about I DM'd them for like asking them to get a reading, and it was somebody who using my pictures or something like
Right.
that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like sometimes, and that's a fucking strategy. It wins. That's a winning strategy
Right.
sometimes. You know, I do get those DMs sometimes. I'd be like, my man, that wasn't me DMing you, and they mad. They want they want a refund, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
I can offer you a real reading, but
Yeah, but even that, I'm not doing that.
No. If you want to pay me, you can buy a reading from me. If
yeah,
you,
you can
one,
buy a reading, but like,
yeah.
you
But
know
I
what I
can't
mean?
give
Like,
you money back. No.
yeah, we're not doing. I'm not doing any of that. I'm not doing free readings this way. I'm not like
No.
don't get in my DMs talking about you got scammed. We're not. That's on you, Playboy.
So why? So, but you wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't
Right?
do that probably.
No, I would
I
not.
don't think so. Like, you know, how hungry am I? You know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, I think that let's exclude the starvation or your kids are going to die, kind
Okay.
of angle from this for a second, because I think that we all understand that's a thing. But like just to succeed.
Sure. Just to get ahead or
Yeah.
something like this. Yeah. Then I don't think I would do that. No. Because I wouldn't feel good about that. I have a certain amount of, I always, I do my very best to act in integrity, all the time, you know, like I've been dealing with family drama recently, and it's been a situation where it's like I really cannot abide this bullshit, but like I am going to stay. I'm gonna be in integrity. I'm gonna be cool with what I did. You know what I mean? So like,
Why?
why? Because yeah, why? I don't know. Honestly, this is all right. So, do I feel like telling the story in front of everybody? All
Okay,
right.
if you
So
don't.
yeah. I just like there's been yeah. All right, I'll go ahead and tell the story. So one time, not too long ago, I came back from Costa Rica. I've been evicted out of every place that I've ever lived in. And so I got evicted out of Costa Rica. It was like kind of ugly. I think I talked about it on this podcast. You can go listen to like episode 3 of the podcast or whatever.
Right.
But so I end up back in Missouri, which is where I'm from, and I'm staying with my mom for a little while. And she and I are talking about like, oh, well, can I stay here for like another year or something like that? Get myself together. She's like, yeah, that's all good. And then she get a dog, and the dog is angry, and she chased me out the crib with this angry dog. Right? Dog is mad, and she's like, yeah, I don't know, maybe you gotta go. And so like I get kicked out the spot, right? And so then so she know, and I will like kind of leave running, you know what I mean? So I'm not
Yeah.
really prepared. I don't got dishes. I don't got like furniture, this type of thing, you know what I mean? And so she knows this, and she was like, "Yo, I know that you like don't got none right now. Like if you want, I can give you this like pant. She got a nice pant with the red copper on it and all that with the like cute. And so I go over and she presses this into my hand. I'm like, cool, thank you. And get back to the crib, and then she calls me. She's like, "Hey, I didn't mean to I didn't mean to give you the good one. Come back. I got a whack one that I can give to you." And I'm like, "All right." So I get back in the car, drive on over there, get that back. She's like, "You can go grab," and I'm like, "Never mind.
Right.
I don't need that.
Yeah. No,
Never
thanks.
mind."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I bounce, right?
Sure.
A little while later, a couple years later, then talking to my cousin, and so in the meantime, my mom has been out in the world gallivanting, and so her red copper pans, they have taking a beating and she can't eat out of them anymore,
Sure,
right?
sure, sure, sure.
So now she's in a spot where she don't got no cookware and nothing like this. And so my cousin is like, oh, well, I got some real nice cookware that I'm not even using no more. So like, let me just send that over your way. And she's like, oh, great. Thank you so much. And now she's got this beautiful cookware, right?
Mhm.
And so there's a part of me that's like, you don't like why would I act in integrity? I don't gotta
Mhm.
act in integrity. Like,
Mhm.
look at this right now. You know what I mean? Like with the cute cookware and all of that, and it's gonna come full circle, and you good, boo boo. You ain't gotta worry about that. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? And so when I think about my own place in things, and like in my interaction in that whole thing, and like I've been very very careful to make sure to be in my integrity
Right.
and I guess like a reason that I think of a lot of times is my relationship to ancestry. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like
Mhm.
the dead ones. I want to make sure that my relationship with the dead ones is good.
Mhm.
But again, why? I don't know. Uh, because that's like kind of the best I got. They chose me or something, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, sure, okay, cool. So I'm gonna be like be little pious boy or whatever, and like and for what? Like this is what I come into all the time. And I just be like, I don't know. I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't know that it's worth it is the thing. You know what I mean? Like I maybe it is. I don't have a lot of data to go against, but I do know that like I can look around and see other people with the nice cookware or whatever and be like, I don't know that this is actually worth it.
Yeah. Uh,
And you could
so
go the same like billionaires don't sleep good at night and whatever you could go down that path, but like I don't know.
sure. So um, what I find really interesting there is the moment of refusal,
Hmm.
the moment where you're like, you know what, I'm good, because there's a lot of power there. There's a lot of like sovereignty. So you know what I mean? Like there are lots of times we get offered something where we're forced to eat a little shit to get it, and that erodes at your soul in a really nasty way, is my personal opinion. Now I have similarly lost. I carry a certain amount of extra college loan debt because I lost a job because I told off my boss and my buddy told me not to, and
Yeah.
I was and
Whew.
in
I
one
was
way it was not wise. Do you know what I mean? It would
uh,
have been a lot
uh-huh.
wiser just to shut my mouth and
Hmm.
to let it pass. And it's a case where it's a little bit of a gray area because I don't know
And are
that I
you still
really.
paying on that debt right now?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Hmm.
And like and this one's a
Hmm.
little gray too because I don't know if I was really fighting for anybody or I was just mad.
Yo.
Like if I was fighting for somebody, if I was a king because I was looking after my people,
Right.
then 100% worth it. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
This may have been a little prideful. Do you know what I mean? Like this
Sure.
may not have been all that great. So
Hmm.
but it's a little gray. However, there are times when I have been able to look at myself and been like, no, I know what my price is in some ways because
Hmm.
I knew what I was risking when I did it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and there's power there that I was the only one who decided to say fuck you in that moment.
Hmm.
There's some real power that has helped me out in other ways that's hard to like, measure directly. But like I know the moments when I've been able to look back on this and been like, I might be many things, but
Hmm. Hmm.
and there's
That's that
another
integrity.
version. Yeah, that's the integrity. Now, my buddy who told me not to say anything, he also still has his integrity because from his framing,
Hmm.
his whole purpose there was to keep his head down, keep his wife fed, and
Hmm.
move the fuck on. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And
Hmm.
so getting in a fight with this guy about bullshit that he was doing was not the game he wanted to play. He was
Hmm.
never, and so to him, he feels smart. He feels like
Hmm.
he is also in his integrity. He's like, I was smart. I didn't get caught up in some bullshit like like Brian did. And I took care of my people, right?
Uh-huh.
I was strong enough to eat some shit
Mm-hmm.
and take care of my people. And so that's one reason I think that like kind of doesn't matter on the one hand, you know, there's a cost to everything. And sometimes changing your framing is smart, you know, and will give you the same benefit. And you got to know, and you got to see like it. But I think if I had let it pass because I was afraid, it would have been really bad for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I had let it pass because, like my buddy, I was smart enough to be like, I don't need this bullshit, and my freedom lies in avoiding getting tangled up with this motherfucker over here,
Mm-hmm.
then that would have also been okay, right? Like, because again, I think I would have felt free at the end of it. So that's one of the metrics I apply for these kind of circumstances is like,
Mm-hmm.
because the value of feeling free and integrity is really high to me.
Right, right.
It lets me
Mm-hmm.
say fuck you to kings. Do you know what I mean? Like when you have
Mm-hmm.
so you were earlier talking about it, and I started thinking about the Christian martyrs. Like when is it good to be like Jesus? I don't know who that is, and then teach 100 more people about Jesus. And when is it good to be
Sure.
like, yeah, I'm going to jump in front of the lions? And like the early church had a real fight about this because there was a lot of them who were like, why are you guys jumping in front of the lions? Just keep your mouth shut. Be like, yeah, yeah, hail Caesar, and then go about doing the thing, man. Like you don't owe a tyrant the truth,
Sure.
you know. And I think that's actually smart most of the time
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
until it will kill you anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, well there's a pretty famous story about that, right? Was it Peter or Paul? Forget which one it is.
Peter denies Jesus.
Peter. Yeah, yeah. And where he's
Yeah,
like where he's like, no, 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 I would not do that.
yeah.
And
No,
they're like,
hang out with a
hey, I saw
Jesus.
you with Jesus the other day. I'm like, oh, well, no, no, no,
No, I
I
don't know
wasn't
him.
me.
Yeah,
Mm-mm,
right.
mm-mm. You know, and he like feels a way about it in the end.
Feels a way about it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But it's a complex story because he lived, he founds the church,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and there's forgiveness for him in the story too. You know, so but I do think that like so I think it's good to sit with these things a little bit. But for me, my personal thing is like when when it would cost you more to like when you lose the power of saying fuck. So like here's another example. Okay, so the empire captures you, right? You're not running around anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like you
Mm-hmm.
know, they're like, all right, well, you can recant. We got you. You can recant, or
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna throw you to the lions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then it's time to say, I'll take the lions, because then you win. Because the only thing they're threatening you with, you're like, you can't scare me with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you should
Mm-hmm.
try not to get caught for the long. Do you know what I mean? Like that's how I feel
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
It's like don't don't martyr yourself until the right time, you know.
Sure. Uh-huh.
So I think it's fine to play the game until it will cost you your artistic integrity or your ability to do the thing. If it's like I don't want to I don't want to spend all day answering letters from fans. I'd rather be working on my novel. But the fans are what pay for me to be able to do the novel. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, spend some
Mm-hmm.
time answering letters from your fans. Like just fucking chill out,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But if it's like I've done so many talk shows and everything else, and now I can't write anymore,
Sure.
you fucked yourself over. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
A dream of this kind of success.
I do too. It's very theoretical.
Right. Yeah, sometimes I think about this. I'd be like, man, I'm really gonna get into trouble with people on this one, or people are gonna notice that I copied such and such a thing, and it's like, no one's even listening. No one's gonna
We're
notice.
good. We're fine. I can talk about my job all I want on this thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure.
No, the yeah, I don't know. That's where I sit on. That's where I end up on shit.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's hard to, you always end up boiling the frog a little bit,
Yeah,
like when are you really about to get thrown to the lions or
right.
recant? You know what I mean? Whereas it's rare to have such a stark line in the sand, you know? And so, you recant a little bit, and then you recant a little bit, and then you
Yeah,
recant a little bit, and then you recant a little bit. And then, after a few times of this, then you look back and you don't recognize yourself anymore, but you recognized yourself the whole way through, right? You
yeah,
know, it's
yeah.
like looking back at your old passport photo and be like, damn, I really did used to look like that, you know?
Yeah, look, there's a lot more gray in my beard these days if I let it grow out. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah, I feel you.
true thing. But I always think about it too. I earned my silver, right? I lived this long.
Right, right, right. Yeah. Shout out to continuing to live. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to find here for a second if there was another. Oh yeah, I think you'll like. This is the one I was looking for. There's two last little bits of tidbit from the 36 strategies I thought you might enjoy.
And this is the dark path, you said?
Yeah, this
All right,
dark
cool.
path. Feign stupidity instead of madness.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay.
In other words, it's safer just to play dumb. Like if you're acting crazy, people are still going to notice you. If you're just like, no, I don't know anything, officer.
Uh,
That's safer. But then this last one is, I think, it's the last strategy, and it's under the category of strategies for when everything seems lost.
okay. Okay.
Run away,
Huh.
and I like it a lot because I don't think we're taught enough that you should run away. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, it's interesting. When I studied martial arts, and I studied martial arts way, way less than you did. I had put in 6 years or something like that.
6 years is solid, man. That's a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long time ago.
I'm
I,
not gonna, we're not going to have a death match. You're good.
yeah, fingers crossed on that. But when I used to study, I studied Aikido.
Mhm.
And the first thing that they'll say in Aikido is like, if you have the option, maybe you should bounce. Maybe you
Yeah,
should just not be in that spot. The best way to avoid a punch is to not be in the path of that punch.
yeah,
don't don't be there. You know?
yeah. Choose something else. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and so
Like,
that's like for Aikido, that's like a first.
yeah.
Like that's not your win all is lost. That's like maybe have you considered running away?
Aikido is an amazing. It reminds me of. I'll send you the link sometime. This guy, who I think did a really good breakdown of where Aikido is amazing as a martial art, and why people misinterpret this and they think it does things that it doesn't do. But one
Mm,
of the things it's great at is the real life self defense of don't get in a fight.
yeah. Hmm.
It's fantastic for that. And everybody wants to be like, if you do Aikido, you can fight anybody because the Japanese riot police you. I'm like, there are some cool wrist locks and some cool throws. But if you're really listening to what the teachers are telling you, the real
Hmm.
magic is in like, I'm gonna get off this. There's a very famous Aikido story about the guy who takes out a crazy person on a train. Do you know the story?
I don't think so.
It's one of the early Aikido masters is on a train, I think in Japan, like a subway, and there's a drunk guy on there, and he's like harassing everybody, and he's pretty violent looking and everything else. And the person this guy is with is like, "Are you gonna do something? You're an Aikido master. Are you gonna take this dude out and fix, because he's scaring everybody?" And the Aikido guy is like, "Yeah, I'll handle it." And he gets up and he goes over to him and he's like, "Don't I know your brother?" The guy's like, "Who?" He's like, "Your brother Jay." He's like, "I don't have a brother." And they get in this like weird conversation about this dude's brother. And finally they start talking a little bit and they do find somebody they have in common. And they sit down on the side and they start talking about this hometown that they both have some connection to. And the drunk guy starts crying about how he's so lonely and can't do anything. And the other guy talks to him for a while and they get him off the bus and they get him on or the train and they get him to where he's trying to go.
Hmm.
And the first guy is like, "I thought you said you were going to do Aikido to that guy." He's like, "I did." You know,
Uh-huh. Yeah. this shit sucks.
It's way better to punch a motherfucker in the face.
Kinda at a certain point, you know what I mean? Like this
Yeah.
if I'm on a train somewhere,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and I'm gonna derail my whole damn day, I'm done, miss my stop. I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm
Yep.
3 hours away from where I'm meant to be at, and
100%.
like I done had, and now I got this whole dude. My man has like put so much of what he's talking about. Now that's on my heart. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Now
Hmm.
I gotta think about that for the next 3 hours when I'm like when I catch the next train on the way back and all this. You know what I mean? Like I've been in this position a few times. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like, I love Aikido for these are not the droids you're looking for kind of
Yeah.
style of combat management. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
For
Like,
sure.
don't
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
worry about that.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. That's just like, whew, vanish
I'll,
into the night.
I'll be going over here. Thank you.
Right,
We're both
exactly.
doing this motion because this is actually a thing in Aikido. Like this like thing is a real thing. Yeah.
Uh-huh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. So, like, so I really love Aikido for that. But like, and I be in this spot a lot of times where I'm like talking people down or like I'm in a spot and I'm like, all right, tell me about it, man. All right. That's my evening. This is what I'm gonna do tonight is I'm gonna hang out with this dude. I don't like this smell right now, but I I'm gonna take one for the team. Everybody gonna get to their destination good and not me. All right. I'll see everybody tomorrow, maybe. You know, like that shit, I can't be recommending that shit. You know what I mean?
I it is hard to recommend wizardry because that is what
Okay.
being a wizard is like.
Yeah, for real, for real. And so if we think about wizard as being associated, the word wizard as being associated with the word wise, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is one of the things that I think about a lot. Is like there's some kids in my life now. I got a little niece and nephew who I think about all the time, and I think about like mentorship and stuff like this. I'm like coming into a place where I'm a teacher and this kind of thing, and I don't recommend this shit. I don't think it's. This is what I'm saying. I don't necessarily think that this is that good a strategy. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
have been doing this. Let me tell you, the grass look hella green over there. I don't
Hmm.
I don't necessarily like what's going on over here. So it's kind of dead around here. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And, like it's fine. I like sitting by myself in the darkness sometimes. But like yeah, you know, this is not the kind of thing where I'm like, going to the youth and I'm like, do what I did. You know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah.
probably shouldn't. You should probably, go do. If you're 11, you should probably like do dumb shit for a while. Just stop trying to be so wise. Go be a dummy. You know?
I think we live in a culture where it's very the rewards of what we do or are asked to do are not as apparent as they are in some other cultures and
Mhm.
other setups. Like the role that we play in society is less respected in a lot of ways than it is in other places. So I think we feel it very hard here. But I think that's because we live in a very sick society that, you know, it's kind of always plague time here.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I'm
Uh-huh.
reading this history of Paracelsus, and he gets in trouble at one point because he is trying to heal people in a town that where there's plague, and the other doctors had bounced,
Mm.
um, and
Hmm.
he stayed, and he actually did help some people get through it. You know what I mean? And then when they came back in town, he was like, "Where'd you go? Where'd you guys go?" You know what I mean? And
Mm.
they got mad and they kick him out of the town because he made them all look bad.
Sure.
Um, and he writes a really self-important, angry letter about it. Like he's
Hmm.
mad.
Hmm.
But I feel like that's kind of the scenario we're in a lot of like there's a lot of sickness and it's hard. And I think if we don't point that out to people that it's hard, then we are doing them a disservice for sure.
Hmm.
Might be easier just to eat a bunch of Cheetos and play a bunch of video games, man. Like it might be easier. But I don't think it's better.
Is anything ever better?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of fun here, is the thing. Like, I
Sure.
think that, like, I get adventures other people don't get.
That much is true.
And I love that shit.
I be telling stories at parties and people be like, "You what?"
I was not too weird in this circle, but I had a consultation about doing an exorcism not too long ago.
Right, right.
And a different buddy of mine was like, who's not so much in this sphere, was like, "What are you getting up to today?" I was like, "Oh, later on today, I got a consultation about an exorcism." He's like, "Please tell me what that even means." Like,
Right. It's
you
kind
know,
of what you're thinking of.
yeah, exactly. It's I'm gonna call somebody up. We're gonna talk about it. But I love that. I wouldn't trade that for anything. You know what I mean? Like I want a wild, weird, fucked up life like that. I
Sure.
think if you don't want it, if you do not find that fun,
Mhm.
don't jump in. You know what I mean? It's a little bit like going to grad school. If you don't really want to do what that calls to do, don't risk your mental health doing it.
Literally,
Like,
no one should go to grad school. Let's be real about this. This is not for anybody. Grad school will not make you better.
man, yeah, probably some of them science nerds. They need the extra time. You know what I mean? Like, maybe,
Ah, okay, we don't. I don't have
maybe.
to die on this hill right now.
But the but really the point is that, like, it is hard. It is a hard,
Right.
weird path. And if you don't find the practice good, if you don't like practicing and you don't like getting the weird, then you probably shouldn't do it. You're gonna have to be on this path. You're gonna be have to be happy that crows will wake you up at 3 a.m. and you're like, well, shit, now I have to go walk 2 miles and put a stone on top of something. You know what I mean? Like, you're just like,
Sure.
if that doesn't sound fun, then you should do something else.
Yeah, yeah. That reminds me of when I got called to Costa Rica to go like I thought it was like gonna be amazing because I was gonna go like drink medicine and all that sort of stuff. But
Right.
the image that called me out there was a hawk tearing a pigeon to shreds.
Mm.
It
Mm.
like came and sat on my window and tore and like cracked all the bones and like the tendons and like the
Yeah.
feathers are flying around everywhere and a bunch of feathers got into my the offering that I had the coffee offering that I had given to the ancestors and stuff, and it was like a completely horrifying image
Right.
that did go on to describe the event, but
Yeah.
like that's a little bit like the path,
Yeah.
like it's the path that of like shit's gonna get torn up, shit's gonna get fucked up over here.
So we need somebody like you to jump in, and
Yeah, and you're the guy, so
you're
go
the guy.
go do that.
You're the guy. Um, yeah, I like being the guy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, wouldn't
Yeah.
trade it, right? What,
No.
what else are you gonna do?
I don't know. Meditation seems really fucking boring.
Right, indeed. And with that said, Brian, thank you so much for being here another time. It has been a delight, always a delight to hang out with you.
Absolutely, one of my great pleasures, my buddy, that I would not trade for anything. This is one of my real great things I look forward to in the week.
Oh,
So we've pitched ourselves quite a bunch of this podcast. So I feel like we're probably good on those score. But
everybody should go to
guys.
Brian Wilkins or WilkinsBrian.com. Everybody should go to ZamboniFunk.com. You should go to Spotify or wherever you like to listen to your music at and find ZamboniFunk music there. Thank you so much, beautiful people. I will check y'all on the flip side. Peace and blessings.